First of all, Jon Oliveira, thank you for attending and congratulations.
Well, thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here. I mean, this is an opportunity to talk to the residents and people from New Bedford and outside of New Bedford about the education system, and hopefully, we engage the audience and get them involved in our education.
With our show, we try to, my main goals of the Chris Resendes show, as we call it now, are to inform, educate, and help. I want to inform voters of the process. I want to inform voters of who they're voting for, or who they have voted for in your case, and then educate them on what your job is as a school committee member, what your plan is as a school committee member, and what you feel are the most important decisions and tasks at hand now that you're a school committee member. But first, let's start with Jon Oliveira. Who is Jon Oliveira, and how did you get here?
Well, I'm born in New Bedford, grew up in Dartmouth, went to Dartmouth Public Schools through middle school, then went to Bishop Connolly High School in Fall River, graduated in '83, and 17 years old, went into the Navy.
Thank you for your service. And
became quite adept at swabbing decks in those early years. I became a ship's navigator, made Petty Officer First Class, which is an E6. Then took my commission as a naval officer, and got out in '04 as a lieutenant commander. I did serve some time in the Merchant Marine, serving as a ship's officer on some container ships. Did work in the private sector for a little bit, and for the most part now I'm a stay-at-home dad.
Which is very, very rewarding, I'm
It is
sure.
exceptionally rewarding.
Now, how many children do you have in the New Bedford Public Schools?
I have 3 children. I have 2, one in 6th grade and one in 7th at Keith, and I have one at the high school in 9th grade.
The next question, why did you run? Surely it has to do with more than just your children. Why did you run?
No, it really is about my kids, and that's why I ran. I'm not a politician. I've kind of been out of the political arena since I was injured in Iraq, and I could have called on politicians and got hold of donor databases and everything else that they have, and I opted against that. Because I wanted to do this on my own, because it was about my kids. And it all started a couple of years ago. We opted our kids out of the MCAS, and I signed a letter and sent it to the school. And my wife gets a call a couple days later from the principal asking her if she agreed with my decision to opt the kids out of MCAS. Well, I think that's a little bit of chutzpah on the part of the principal.
Yes.
To do that. That's like, a child doesn't get their way with mom, so they go see dad. That didn't work. And then she only asked about my 2 daughters who were in the advanced learning program. Never asked about my son opting out of the exam, who's he's an average student. And that's when I realized that this was about numbers. That my son's numbers didn't matter to them, because they weren't as high as the girls. And I started paying more attention to what was going on in the schools. And we had kids, our daughter was just starting at Keith, and the climate was terrible. There was just a lot of issues going on. And I said, we got to do something. And everybody that I had voted for in the past, who was sitting on that school committee, did nothing, and has done nothing but sit at school committee meetings and talk, but with no action. Keith, for instance, is still having huge problems with student behavior, to the point that a teacher was assaulted last week. 2 students were hauled off to the police department. Apparently there was one Monday. So it's still going on. This is 2 years after they set up a subcommittee on climate in the middle schools. What's been done? Absolutely nothing. They just sat there and talked about it.
Mike. You bumping into Mike.
They just sat there and talked about it. So it's important that we have people on the school committee that are actually going to take some action, do something.
Now, what's your plan for this behavior? Because it does happen. I reached out prior to this interview, we had discussed earlier before the show, and I had talked to a few teachers from, actually a couple wrote some words for me to relay to you about the safety as well.
Right.
You came across, you saw it earlier. What is the plan? What can you do as a school committee member?
Right now, I don't have an answer for that. And that's one thing you'll always get from me. If I know the answer, I'm going to tell you what's going on. If I don't know, I will find out.
Okay.
And part of the next 2 months for me has been the process of reaching out to other groups and also to educate myself on the programs and some of the other issues that we're having in the school that as a parent, I wasn't aware of because, my kids are involved in that part of the school system.
Yes.
So there are quite a bit. But we do need to start holding students responsible for their actions. Failure to hold the students responsible and keep them home after school for 5 minutes, and then the next time it's after school for 15 minutes, then it's an hour, then we might call your parents.
Nothing
It's
gets
ridiculous.
accomplished in that.
There's no accountability there. And that's a direct reflection of what's going on in our leadership positions. There's no accountability on the school committee. There's no accountability on the superintendent. And that reaches down. Teachers are afraid for their jobs. Principals are certainly under the gun from the superintendent, to the point that things, if they do get reported to the superintendent, never make it to the school committee. And that's a problem. And that's why school committee members need to be active, engaged with the community, with all the stakeholders, and need to be in the schools finding out what's going on for themselves. I asked one school committee member, when was the last time they were in a school for something that wasn't a function, just to go in and check it out?
Yeah.
The answer I got was, it wasn't like January or it was 2016. They couldn't even give me a month. Well, I voted for you to represent me, my children, and you haven't been in a school for over a year? I have issues with that.
I do
so, the behavior issue, other than holding people responsible, I think we need to look at it. And I need to find out how much of this is driven by state requirements and how much is driven by our own policy. Unfortunately, the state has way too much say in our local community schools.
Yeah. They hold the purse strings, so that's generally what happens.
And I look at that as a fiduciary responsibility of me on the school committee, is to lobby the DESE and our legislators to make changes that are going to improve our school systems. And for me, that's restoring more autonomy to the local school systems, putting more control back in, so you and I have a say in how our children are educated and disciplined in our community.
Yes. Now, how do you brought up the MCAS? I'm a huge advocate for getting rid of the standardization of our students. Each person is different and should be treated differently.
Right.
They shouldn't be. Mayor Lang brought it up last week. There should be an option of hey, he graduated from high school, or he graduated with an MCAS, both being of equal weight. Because now, a lot of the higher learning institutions are getting away from the standardization anyway.
Right.
Prior to now, it seems like our school system's lagging behind from the non-requirements now of the higher institutions of learning.
And MCAS, I'm totally against any high-stakes testing. Our kids are tested enough. MCAS doesn't really tell a parent anything. Parents don't see the results of the MCAS. All it does is turn education into mass production, and that's all it does. It's mass production education. We are spending way too much time on these tests. We're spending too much money buying curriculums to teach to the test, and to have a requirement at 10th grade to pass this MCAS is absolutely ridiculous. Scott Lang had it right several years ago when he was mayor. And that was part of the problem, I believe, that led to the DESE getting involved in our school system once the Mayor Mitchell was elected.
Yeah. Well, if you look at go back to the interviews with Mayor Lang that I had with him, he discussed. I don't really want to put words in his mouth, but something towards the fact that the way that the school was threatened to be taken over by the state was just a farce in itself anyway. It wasn't
Right, correct.
and it's all lingo and mumbo jumbo that really was never going to happen and never fully going to be taken over, and it was almost a way to enforce standardization by the state,
Right.
which is what we
Right,
were
and,
discussing.
and obviously
we're
the
against.
DESE was not happy with Mayor Lang at the
Yeah.
time because of his very vocal opposition to the MCAS. Well, now they got May to deal with.
Yeah. That's
you
good.
know, and I think it is imperative and it's important that the elected officials of the school committee do that, because it's not just one parent who's against MCAS now going to the DESE.
No.
I got 6,500 people in this city believed in the message that we put out during the election, and that is we're fed up.
Yeah.
And people like Mark Montigny, Tony Cabral, Bob Pizzera need to respect that I carry votes now.
Yeah, a few of those guys kind of lost their way, I feel. Each week we have Isaiah, which in this case is excellent, asks his questions to our guests. Isaiah is a high school student at New Bedford High School, 10th grade. Isaiah, why don't you go ahead and ask school committee member Jon Oliveira, how does that sound?
John works really much better.
Mr. Oliveira to you, I don't care what he says. Why don't you ask him your question?
Aside from like all the negative stuff, what do you like the most about New Bedford school system?
Our family, for the most part, has had a very positive experience with New Bedford schools and New Bedford teachers. My kids went to Rodman. My oldest daughter was in the advanced learning program at Connie. And we had a very positive experience in the elementary schools. And we're having a positive experience with my daughter at the high school. My kids are doing well at Keith. And I think it's great that we have the dual enrollment program. My daughter's been a part of that. She's now in the honors program at the high school. We have a tremendous amount of sports activities. I am distressed that we can't field a hockey team.
Yeah.
I think that's a major issue, that a school of this size can't field a hockey team. But there's a lot of good things going on in New Bedford schools. However, education is our priority, and getting all of our students a quality education. And we can't do that with oversized classes and a negative climate because of student behavior or poor leadership and poor management practices. And so, yeah, I tend to focus, and people may say I'm all doom and gloom, but I see both sides. I hear it from my children every single day. I also hear my children come home, and I guarantee you, at least one of the three every single day will tell me they had a substitute.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
And that's, I have a major problem with that. And I think as taxpayers, even if you don't have kids in school, you should have a major problem with that, because you're paying for qualified people to teach your children, to teach the children of our community. So you should be getting, we should be making the maximum use out of the taxpayer's dollar, giving them the best that they're paying for. They think they're paying for something, and we're selling them something else. And that's wrong, and that is directly attributable to the school committee and the superintendent. But no, lots of great things going on. I had a great time this afternoon at Roosevelt Middle School. They had a Veterans Day ceremony, and it was tremendous, and it was great to see the students, talk to the teachers and some parents that were there. But, there are issues, and we need to get those, because we need to make this an equitable and fair and quality education for every student.
Thank you.
Isaiah, I got a question for you, buddy. Two things as a student at the high school that you feel could improve to help the education, whether it's, let me just give you some ideas, whether it's like a way to teach us to deal with the kids, or behavior issues, or class sizes, any of that stuff. Why don't, give us two things that you would say, hey, listen, Mr. Oliver, as a student, I feel that maybe this could change and maybe you could help me in order. And if you don't have one now, let me know and think about it before the end of the interview. I don't want to put you on the spot.
Yeah, I'll think about it.
All right, buddy.
I'd like to see you put them on the spot.
No, I'm
just kidding.
So, like, what he said about the substitutes, I have substitutes, like, almost every day.
Is it for specialized classes like math and?
Yeah, it's not. I have substitute for like.
Do you have long-term substitutes, or is it just
No, it's like
different
it'll
classes?
be random days. I'll just have
Oh,
a
yeah.
substitute. And
Well, I think what you were touching upon was the long-term, right?
Well, both, because sometimes they use the short-term substitutes and they move them around because if they have substitutes for a certain period of time,
Yeah.
they're required by law to send a letter home to you, the parents, saying that
Yeah.
they aren't being taught by certified teachers.
Last year, so this year I have Spanish too,
Mm-hmm.
but last year in Spanish 1 when I was a freshman, we had no teacher all year. We had one teacher for like 3 months and she got fired, and then we had no teacher. We had one teacher, she got fired, no teacher, and it was just
By no teacher, it was just substitutes.
it was just random substitutes every day. We didn't learn anything. So I went into Spanish 2 this year, struggling really bad. But I had a good teacher. She taught me. So I mean, now we're in Spanish 2 again. I know what I'm doing now, but in the beginning of the year, I didn't know anything. So and
Yeah,
then,
and yeah,
This
that's
is stuff that needs to be heard.
exactly, and that is a problem. And the school committee, I am the first person that has been elected to the school committee, and I don't know how long, that it actually has kids that are currently going to school. You know, I see the homework every day. I pick the kids up every day. I take them to school in the morning. I talk to other parents. I talk to teachers, and the issues are huge. And you know, at the high school has a bad reputation because of the climate there. The folks that are in the advanced learning program and the honors program at the high school, that's a great program, probably the best in the area. But those kids are sheltered in the high school.
Yeah.
My concern is for the average student that's not in the honors program. What are they learning?
Don't get lost.
You know,
Yeah.
what's going on with them in the high school? I hear from, the security people that some students are allowed to hang out in hallways during class time because they're involved in gangs, but they don't want them to leave the school because it's going to affect numbers.
Is that true?
yeah, so like you could go any period to the schools. You could just walk into school tomorrow and walk in the hallway down the middle of like first period, and you already see kids in the hallway sitting in the cafeteria when nobody's there on their phone recording, just like I'm in the honors program, so like there's a lot of kids in the school that they're friends of mine. I grew up with them, and like I grew up with them from elementary school when they were good kids, and like now I see them in the hallway like every day, and I tell them like just go to class. Like now my teacher don't care, so it's like that's something that like I feel like they don't care that kids just skip class anymore. You don't even get written up for it.
Yeah, and see, and that's and when I have a problem is when I have
That's horrible.
when I have teachers, security, students telling me these things, and the superintendent has the nerve to tell the mayor and the school committee that everything is hunky-dory. The mayor, who has children at New Bedford High, should be seeing and hearing the same things I am, because I believe one of his daughters is in the honors program with mine.
Yeah. I'm a little perturbed by a lot of this. I've heard a lot of bad stuff. Like, I talked to him, but some of this stuff I'm hearing now is not a good look.
No,
for the school
it's
system.
crazy. So there is deceit going on at the highest levels of the administration. And whether the school committee is just accepting that, I don't know. But they obviously don't seem to care. And that I just have a problem with it.
Yeah.
That they are not doing anything about this.
What we do here is we also take questions live from
Sure.
Facebook. We're going to do some rapid fire because we are
Okay.
running behind the clock here.
Yeah.
We'll start off with Juvenile Nevs. What is your plan for the future with the kids in school? We already went through that, so you can actually skip that part. Mary Ellen Newby. My kids had IEPs.
So does mine.
Provided accommodations. IEPs are a special.
Right. Yeah. I have one of my children has an IEP.
If there were 20 spelling words to be memorized a week, my kids were only required to learn 10. This is applied to all subjects. Come MCAS time, they were held to higher standards. How is this fair?
It's not fair. MCAS isn't fair. And so what I encourage you to do, and I'm going to encourage every parent,
Opt out.
opt out. Yeah, I mean, you can't opt out anymore. You have to refuse the test. And so we've had our children refuse the test.
And they're in honest classes and they're good students.
And the administration will tell you that we're going to lose money and this is going to impact the schools. No, it's not. And secondly, it sends a clear message to the DESE when we have a high percentage of people opting out that this is not
The
how
way to
we
go.
want
Yeah.
our children educated.
Next question, Christy Amaral. Can I ask a little man? He's not so little. He's a heavyweight wrestler. Come on.
I think I know her.
She asks, what experience do you see with bullying at the high school?
So like at the high school, that's something that I don't really see a lot actually. I hear about it sometimes, but I'm really friends with everybody, and
That I can attest to. I went to a football game with Asaya.
and a lot of people like if I see somebody that nobody likes, not that nobody likes,
Yeah.
but like that nobody really talks to, and he's alone in the hallway, I'll say what's up to him, and like in my school, like I don't see a lot of bullying at all. I see people with their own groups of people that just don't bother
Yeah.
anybody. Even with the kids that are bad kids, I don't really see that a lot. And in my school, we have great guidance counselors, and like when you said about the like there's issues with the higher people in the school. We have great guidance counselors, and even our principals, like Mr. Longo, great principal. My guidance counselor, Miss Pereira, shout out Miss Pereira, great guidance counselor.
Shout out Miss Pereira. Miss Pereira actually reached out to me because Asaya was having a little issue at school. So she pulled the strings, and she knows where it hurts, you know what I mean? And he went back to class and did the right thing afterwards. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
And so I feel like bullying is, I mean, of course, in every school there's kids who get bullied, but you don't see that a lot.
It's not really a big...
Yeah,
And what you see.
what I see, yeah.
But it is an issue at Keith and the other middle
Yeah,
schools.
I've
Yeah.
read a lot about it in the other schools
Yeah.
and heard about it. Some of the stuff I want to try to get through this fast. Terry Walkowitz, success in education involves more than just teachers, administrators, and students. Are there strategies we could use to get more parent involvement, investment, and active participation in the child's education?
That's clearly something that we have to look at.
I think that's a huge issue.
Parent engagement is huge. Parents taking responsibility for their children is huge. And we have a lot of parents that don't do that.
No.
And, you know, people, I'm sorry if you don't like this, but people say, well, you know, some are, you know, single parent families.
There are plenty of single moms that are doing their job.
Yeah. And
I don't want to hear
you know,
Messiah's mom.
your economic situation should not affect whether you have respect for yourself and respect for others. That doesn't make any difference how much money you have or what your economic condition is. And so we need to engage parents. One of the challenges is with our ELL learners and engaging our parents that aren't English speakers. That's a huge problem. And I will mention Colleen DeWicki, who was also elected to the school committee. I know Colleen talked about that a lot. I was more of the immediate issues during the campaign.
She was doing the more...
And Colleen talked about that a lot. And you know, I think between us, it's something we certainly got to look at in the school committee. We need to come together and we need to formulate a plan on how to engage parents. And we need your input. And that's the thing. You too, you need to be engaged with us so we can make the right decisions for our children.
And finally, our last question. Actually, it's kind of the same thing, so we're going to skip that. I'm just going to get right to it. Pia Durkin. Superintendent Dr. Pia Durkin. I don't know how much longer she's got on her guaranteed contract,
Yeah.
and I know that you are a strong stick carrying it about, you know, getting her out of her position, basically.
Yeah.
Why and how are you going to...
Well, I certainly have to question the means on how she arrived at our school system. Considering her past, she had issues in Boston Public Schools. She had issues at the Attleboro Public Schools. She was just about forced on us by the DESE. The school committee gave her free rein to make changes that felt were necessary. And I you know, give the superintendent the opportunity when she first got here. But she's failed. She I think her leadership abilities are lacking. Her management abilities are lacking. If I had a retention problem like she does with teachers and staff, and it's not just teachers. I mean, it's maintenance, it's administrators,
She's lost a lot of principals. She's lost a lot of teachers.
and she can't even keep new teachers. So we have a problem. And if I had that retention issue, I would have been relieved of command in the military. If I had people jumping ship like that. It's not good. And the big issue is it has gotten down to our students and it affects their education. Because students, and even at the youngest ages, see it in their teachers. And when kids know the name of the superintendent really should be
insignificant.
Especially to an elementary school kid. But elementary school kids know the name Peter Durkin.
I don't know if it's so much. I'm thinking it's the parents at home talking about her, or do you see it in the schools?
I didn't know the name of my superintendent when I was growing up.
Neither did I.
I remember my teachers.
Yeah.
But in New Bedford, it'd be kind of hard to remember your teachers because they come and go so damn fast.
Yeah. We had a couple shows back when I had Josh talking about teacher retention.
Yeah.
What his plans were, Josh Amaral.
Yep.
Your new colleague. What his plans were to change the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
The only way you're going to change the atmosphere and the environment, which has really become toxic for everybody involved, is to change superintendents. I mean that's all. That's my answer to it.
Okay.
It's not going to get rid of all the problems, but it will certainly. We need to find a superintendent that's going to fit our community. That is going to educate children the way we want our children educated. And that is going to embrace the community and bring everybody together and show respect for everyone in the community. This superintendent shows no respect. I don't know if you've ever been to a school committee meeting, but to go to one of those, she has no respect for the school committee. She has no respect for parents that are talking, or even more so for students that go and speak at the public comment period. I would, if I taught those kids, I'd be damn proud that those kids actually
took the time
and were able to get up in front of the school committee
Absolutely.
to talk about problems. So respect is a huge issue, and the school committee has let this happen. Let's make no bones about that. They have let her run amok. So it is a failure on the part of the school committee as well. Right now, I don't believe I have the votes to get her removed immediately. But there's going to have to be some changes made. And I think the voters really said that during this election. And so I think the school committee is going to be forced to do something whether they like to or not.
Well, she agreed to set up a date to be on. So we're going to discuss some stuff with her.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I didn't expect it. And I got the email here today from Mr. Mata.
Mm-hmm.
And Dr. Durkin asked for me to set up a date.
Good.
She asked, so
it's about time that
I'm looking for the
It's a little too
opportunity.
late for her to be in the community, but she can still answer these questions.
Yeah.
Because right now the New Bedford School Department is spending all this time selling the media on how great New Bedford High is and how great this is, but they're focusing on these little programs.
I followed a lot of social media, being that we are on social media, and especially during this election, on the topic of Dr. Durkin. And to be quite honest with you, one of the largest thorns in Mayor Mitchell's side during the campaign was that. It was either crime or Dr. Durkin. And
Yeah, I hit the mayor hard.
Yeah, at some point when you hear that often, I really would love to hear her side. I've never talked to her, really.
I haven't either.
My wife has interacted with her minimally as an employee of the New Bedford Public Schools, so she really doesn't know much about her. But what I did do to close, I did reach out to several teachers, two of them being from Keith, and they wrote me some stuff that I wanted to bring up on the show. And just some thoughts on it, quick to close the segment, and then I'll give you a little time to, discuss what your plan is or anything you want to discuss. Student behavior is creating chaos in the schools. Students are blatantly disrespectful, defiant, and unsafe in the classroom and halls, and there is no order or consequence. Mind you, this is from a teacher, an educator at Keith.
Mm-hmm.
I also believe that administration is trying, but their hands are tied as well. Teachers are having objects thrown in their classes at them. Sometimes they're shoved by students without any consequence. So there are assaults. Number 2, it seems like central administration, in quotations, superintendent, is not addressing the issues of student behavior, which is impacting learning and test scores, and is instead focused on redesigning plans, revamping lesson plans, and engaging students to critically think. However, without students who can be in a classroom and be respectful and are held accountable, group work and hands-on lessons where kids are actively grappling with this complex task is just plain out unrealistic. They're ignoring the real problem and refusing the valid and say out loud that their problem even exists. Instead, the focus is shifted back to the teachers, and if we had more engaging lessons, students would behave. It's the behavior. So what they're doing is they're blaming the lack of respect that we discussed, the lack of the hard fist that needs to be struck down once in a while, and they're blaming it on the teacher's lessons, which I find could be a little bit of both ends. You know, some teachers, let's just call it what it is. There are teachers there, as I will tell you, and I've discussed this with other students, that don't belong teaching anymore. Whether or not they're burnt out because they haven't had any backup, or they just weren't good to begin with.
Right.
That exists.
Sure, yeah, you're going to have that in any
exists.
organization.
I don't care where you work, there's always that bum that is not doing their job. So I do see that. But there are good educators, and the people that I reached out to, I made sure were quality educators, so that way their point was valid. And I wouldn't just throw people that didn't have a good reputation word out there, because that means nothing, in my opinion. How do you feel about that statement?
It's distressing. It really is. And especially by the fact that 2 years ago, this was in the news. This was a big issue. And the school committee, supposedly, were all over it.
Nothing changed.
And nothing changed. And the superintendent apparently doesn't report this to the school committee. For instance, last Monday, at the debate at Gomes School, I brought up the fact that a teacher had been assaulted and a student arrested at Keith that afternoon. It was amazing because there were a few sitting school committee members in the audience that night that immediately went to their phones because they had no idea that a teacher had been assaulted. If a teacher is assaulted as a school committee member, I want to know about it.
Have you reached out to Arthur, what's his name, Lou, at the union about being notified about these issues?
Yes, I
Lou
have.
St. John.
Yeah, and I'll be speaking with meeting with the superintendent for the first time next week.
Okay. I think after this interview, that might be a little contentious meeting, but
and she will, we'll have that discussion. There, I mean, we aren't going to solve anything, but we do need to work together.
It's going to start somewhere.
We do need to be able to work together. But lo and behold, there are going to be some changes because the school committee is who she works for.
Very good. Mr. Oliveira, thank you very much for your time here.
Thank you very much.
I want to give you the opportunity to take a minute. Tell us what you want to tell us, and if you don't have a minute of stuff to say you don't have a minute of stuff to say.
I'm not a teacher. I'm a parent, veteran, who just cares about my kids getting a decent education. You can't do it in classes with over 30 kids. Absolutely. You can't do it in classes where there's a climate of misbehavior or where we're trying to teach non-English kids in classes with English-speaking students, because you're doing both students a disservice.
Absolutely. And that goes for kids with mental illness as well that are mixed in.
And, we need to expand, our availabilities at the two alternative schools, because we do have a lot of students that do have issues and do need additional help. We need to expand that. We certainly need to hold people responsible, and I want to see parents involved. 6,500 people voted for me. That means those people are saying, I said something to those people. And I can be as outspoken as I can be, but if I'm not getting your support and your input, I can't move New Bedford schools forward.
Well, you've been a military leader, so you understand how the structure works.
Right.
You understand how
So,
the structure works. And a lot of people don't realize that part of you holds weight.
Right. And
You've been there,
yeah.
you've led people, and you've led important people. And they should take that and use your experience to
Yeah,
their
and it's not
advantage.
just about leadership, it's bringing people together. I mean,
Well, that's
I
part
was
of
in charge
that's leadership.
I was in charge of the task force, the public relations for the International Task Force after September 11th. I'm dealing with Japanese Navy,
Yeah.
German Navy, the French, the Brits.
Yeah.
And it takes quite a bit to bring everybody together. I just want people to know that I am always available. You can get me on Facebook. You can call me,
That's true. I've reached out to him, and he got right back to me.
508-264-8056. More than happy to talk to you, meet with a group.
And as we discussed, he will meet with Asaya here on out.
And I will meet with students. I want to know what's going on in our schools.
One quick thing before you leave. One of the educators brought this up. Would you be willing to, and I'm going to ask Dr. Durkin this as well, to substitute a class for 2 or 3 days in a row at any of the middle schools or high schools?
What do you mean?
Go be a substitute teacher for a couple days.
Oh, yeah, I have the credits because I believe last year you only need 60 credits to
Yeah.
be a substitute.
I think it would be an experience
Oh, that
for
would be-
everybody that, especially administration, that they could actually be in tune with what's really going on in the schools.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've taught at Mass Maritime. As a Navy instructor, certified fire instructor, but more adult level technical education type things. But I just want people to know that I am available. I represent you and your children. This isn't about some political whim. This isn't about supporting Mayor Mitchell's agenda. This isn't about supporting Charlie Perry's agenda.
Yeah.
It's about our kids.
It's about the kids. John, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
appreciated. Again, anytime you need anything, just please reach out.
Right. Feel free. I'd love to be on again.
All right.
Right.
You
Thank
let me know.
Have a great holiday.
You also, sir.